Well, hours before a midnight deadline, the White House announced its new trade policy, including its baseline tariffs for all countries. The administration said the universal tariff will remain at 10%, which is the same level implemented on the 2nd of April. And for countries the US has a trade surplus with, which is most of them. Nations with which the US has a trade deficit face a 15% floor. And some of the highest adjusted reciprocal tariffs that the White House announced include Syria at 41%, Myanmar and Laos at 40%, Switzerland at 39%, and Iraq and Serbia at 35%. Meanwhile, Trump accused India of the highest tariffs in the world and obnoxious non-monetary trade barriers, warning of more penalties over the trade with Russia. This follows months of stalled trade talks, as you know, despite Prime Minister Modi's White House visit earlier this year as well. But in terms of the impact on home ground, major Indian exports could be affected this quarter. Here's a detailed report. Take a look.
Trump tariffs take effect starting today. The 25% US levy is now in place on Indian exports, hitting electronics, pharmaceuticals, gems and jewelry, refining and textiles. Trump accused India of the highest tariffs in the world and obnoxious non-monetary trade barriers, warning of more penalties over its trade with Russia. This follows months of stalled trade talks despite PM Modi's White House visit earlier this year. India had hoped for a more favorable tariff regime than its regional competitors. For comparison, Vietnam faces a 20% tariff, Indonesia 19%, and Japan 15%. Major Indian exports could be affected this quarter. US-India trade stood at $129.2 billion in 2024. India recently overtook China as a top smartphone supplier to the US, driven by Apple's iPhone assembly. Analysts warn tariffs could hurt this shift. Smartphones are temporarily exempt, but the administration is reviewing critical tech imports under Section 232. India exports roughly $8 billion worth of generic drugs to the US annually. Sun Pharma, Cipla, and Dr. Reddy's supply around 35 to 40% of American prescriptions. A 25% tariff could erode their edge. The Gem and Jewelry Export Promotion Council has said that over $10 billion in exports could be hit. India's refiners importing 37% crude oil from Russia may face penalties. Reliance's deal for 500,000 barrels a day could be disrupted. Indian textile exporters to the US giants like Walmart, Gap, and Costco are bracing for the fallout. The Confederation of Indian Textile Industry has warned that the tariff erodes India's edge over Vietnam. With trade tensions rising and key sectors under pressure, India must now choose between negotiation and retaliation. With remark, Bureau Report, NDTV World.
Our Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal has said that any decision, any negotiation will obviously prioritize national interest. But US Secretary of State Marco Rubio says that India's purchases of Russian oil are helping to sustain Moscow's war efforts in Ukraine. And to quote him, he says it's most certainly a point of irritation in New Delhi's relationship with Washington, although, he further added, it's not the only point of irritation. In an interview with Fox Radio, Rubio claimed that the US president is frustrated with the fact that India continues to buy oil from Russia, despite having so many other oil vendors available and helping to fund Russia's war effort against Ukraine. Listen in to Marco Rubio's remarks.
So as you know, the trade deals are coming down. That's not really your purview. You have enough on your plate. But one thing the president said last night on Truth Social, he goes, Russia continues to be the top oil supplier to India and during their first 6 months. They're making up 35% of the overall supplies. He, quote, India will therefore be paying a tariff of 25% plus a penalty for the above starting on August 1st. He's upset, maybe you're upset, that India continues to get, instead of a small portion, a great portion of their discounted oil from Russia, which is fueling their war machine. How disappointed are you in a so-called ally?
Look, global trade, India is an ally. It's a strategic partner. like anything in foreign policy, you're not going to align 100% of the time on everything. India has huge energy needs, and that includes the ability to buy oil and coal and gas and things that it needs to power its economy, like every country does. And it buys it from Russia because Russian oil is sanctioned and cheap, and meaning they have to, in many cases, are selling it under the global price because of their sanctions.
Yep.
And that, unfortunately, that is helping to sustain the Russian war effort. So it is most certainly a point of irritation in our relationship with India. Not the only point of irritation. We also have many other points of cooperation with them. But I think what you're seeing the president express is the very clear frustration that with so many other oil vendors available, India continues to buy so much from Russia, which in essence is helping to fund the war effort and allowing this war to continue in Ukraine.
Well, Donald Trump also signed an executive order to increase tariffs on Canadian goods imported to the United States from 25% to 35%. Now, the new import tax rates go into effect today, according to a White House fact sheet. In fact, the White House claimed that Trump had increased tariffs on Canada because it had failed to act on the public health crisis caused by fentanyl and illicit drugs flowing across the northern border into the United States. However, in the early hours of Thursday morning, Trump had posted on social media that he might not strike a deal with Canada on tariffs as punishment for his decision to recognize the state of Palestine. Maha Siddiqui has been tracking the latest on how Canada is reacting. She joins us live from Vancouver at the moment. Maha, Trump has raised tariffs on Canadian imports to 35% just hours after criticizing the Palestinian stance. Take us through the reactions in Canada so far.
Well, at the moment, Canada is consistent on its stand that it will recognize Palestine as a state in the upcoming UNGA, that is the United Nations General Assembly, in September. And it says that it gets the strength as an independent country, as a sovereign nation, but with allies and partners coming along together on this issue, for instance, France and the United Kingdom. And therefore, for the moment, it remains committed to this intention that Mark Carney himself announced yesterday of recognizing Palestine as a state in UNGA in September. Now, as far as the tariffs issue is concerned, we can see that Donald Trump is now conflating several issues with this. It started off with fentanyl, the issue of fentanyl, and the issue of illegal immigrants crossing over from the northern border of the United States, that is from Canada. It has now gone down to unfairly meting out structures of tariffs to the farmers. He says they are being tariffed almost 200%, and that farmers and dairy products coming in from farm products and dairy products coming in from Canada will therefore be tariffed by the United States as well. And now he is now associating this 35% tariff on non-CUSMA compliant goods coming in from Canada to the stand on Palestine that Canada has taken. So several issues being conflated there, Parmeshwar, as you can clearly see. Although Donald Trump has said that he's upset with Canada's decision on Palestine, but he's also pointed out that it's not likely to be a deal breaker between the two countries. They have been negotiating on a trade deal for a long time, but Mark Carney had pointed out, Parmeshwar, that it is possible that that trade deal might not be complete before the 1st of August. That was the deadline given by the White House. And therefore, the 35% tariff on non-CUSMA compliant goods will come into effect midnight today.
As always, Maha, thank you so much for taking us through all the latest developments. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's global tariffs faced significant skepticism in a federal appeals court as judges investigated whether the president had overstretched his powers just hours before the latest sweeping round of duties is set to kick in. The full 11-strong bench of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit in Washington, D.C. is actually considering whether Trump exceeded his authority in imposing reciprocal tariffs on a large number of U.S. trading partners. Judges have repeatedly asked if Trump was justified in relying on emergency powers to effectively tear up the U.S. tariff schedule without consulting Congress. Meanwhile, moving on, according to a recent Bloomberg report, India has told US officials that it is not interested in purchasing the F-35 stealth fighter. Now, this comes despite growing pressure from Washington to expand its defense imports. The news outlet actually quoted officials who said the Modi government is unlikely to proceed with any major new defense acquisitions from the United States in the near term, despite Washington's ongoing efforts to secure additional high-value contracts. The topic reportedly did come up during Prime Minister Modi's touchdown in the White House earlier in February this year, when President Donald Trump personally offered the F-35 as part of a broader strategic and defense partnership. Instead, Indian officials actually indicate that New Delhi remains committed to a defense procurement model that emphasizes tech sharing, but local manufacturing and indigenous capability development. Vishal Vivek has broken down all the details for us. Listen into his report.
But these are some strong statements because they go on to say that India is not really interested in procuring these advanced aircraft jets. These are some of the most advanced jets ever produced in human history. These are also some of the most expensive jets produced in human history. But India is more interested in technology transfer and also this Make in India push that needs to be done by India, that needs to be furthered by India. That is what New Delhi is more interested in, not in a particular jet. India has its own, in development jet program that it is focusing on at the moment. As I mentioned, the focus totally is on technology transfer, so that India can produce its own high, advanced jets and have its own arsenal to display.
In further updates related to the United States, the US's Middle East envoy is set to travel to Gaza today as pressure grows on the White House to address suffering in the enclave. Steve Witkoff plans to visit an aid distribution site run by a US-backed organization. Palestinians seeking food have reportedly been killed by Israeli forces at the group's locations. And Donald Trump earlier this week did acknowledge real starvation in Gaza, breaking with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who Trump believes is prolonging the conflict, the war, to hold on to political power. This is what two officials have said on record. But Trump's frustration likely won't result in any major policy shift, many analysts argue. He is now putting the onus on Hamas, not Israel, to end the war. Let's switch tracks now. A 30-year-old British Sikh man has been stabbed to death in East London in an attack involving people known to each other. This is what the UK police believe. Gurmukh Singh, known as Gary, died last week in Ilford in East London and was formally named by Metropolitan Police. The force said its officers had arrested a 27-year-old Amardeep Singh on suspicion of the murder that took place on the 23rd of July. He has since been charged with one count of murder and remains in custody until his next court appearance in London for January 5, 2026. But detectives have also arrested a 29-year-old man and 3 women aged 29, 30 and 54 in connection with this fatal stabbing. They have all since been released on bail until October while this police investigation continues in the UK. News and updates continue right after this very short commercial break. We're back in a moment. Do stay tuned. Well, Canada has appointed diplomat Jeff David as the Consul General in Mumbai, according to an announcement by Canadian Foreign Minister Anita Anand. This is the first diplomatic appointment by Canada here since the expulsion of over 40 Canadian diplomats by India after the row over Canadian allegations under former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau that the Indian government orchestrated the killing of Khalistan separatists on Canadian soil. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom and 13 allied nations have publicly accused Iran's intelligence services of orchestrating a wave of assassination attempts, abductions, as well as intimidation campaigns against individuals residing in Europe and North America. Heavy rains and flooding hit northern China, killing at least 70 people so far, leaving dozens missing and forcing hundreds of thousands to evacuate, according to local authorities. 8 people were killed following the adverse weather, with 18 more missing next to Beijing. Rescue operations are still continuing there. Meanwhile, a Pakistani anti-terrorism court sentenced more than 100 members of jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan's party to prison. terms on charges related to riots that targeted military sites in 2023. 58 of the defendants, who included parliamentarians and senior officials, were sentenced to 10 years in prison. The rest were given sentences ranging from 1 to 3 years. This is what the court says. Myanmar's military nominally transferred power to a civilian-led interim government ahead of a planned election, with the junta chief remaining in charge of the war-torn country in his other role as acting president. And shares of tech giants Meta and Microsoft were soaring on Thursday, with the two companies adding a combined $400 billion to their market values. The two companies together are worth more than JP Morgan Chase, America's largest bank, or Walmart, which is the country's largest retailer, more than 7 times over. For Microsoft, its value briefly crossed the $4 trillion mark, making it only the second company ever to reach that milestone after Nvidia. The company's market value retreated slightly to $3.97 trillion at the close of the trading day. US President Donald Trump continues to put his personal stamp on the White House with a new $200 million ballroom. Work, we're told, will begin on the site in September and will be paid for by Trump and unidentified donors, according to the White House press secretary. In fact, she announced the project at a press briefing, showing renderings of what the finished product will look like. She said it will be completed long before Trump's term is up. Switching tracks, India's space program reached a new milestone as ISRO successfully launched the $1.3 billion NASA-ISRO jointly built Nisar satellite from Sriharikota. In an exclusive interview to NDTV science editor Pallav Bagla, ISRO's chairman Dr. V. Narayanan shares his pride on how ironically this NASA satellite was actually launched using the same tech the Americans once denied to India. We leave you with this.
A glorious success for the Indian Space Research Organization when it launched the world's single most expensive Earth imaging satellite, NISAR, using the geosynchronous satellite launch vehicle. I have with me Dr. V. Narayanan, Chairman of the Indian Space Research Organization. Thanks a lot for speaking to us, Dr. Narayanan. Were you tense? Did you enjoy the launch?
Say, each launch is very, very important for us. It's a new vehicle for us. To be frank, I was a little bit tensed, but then I am relaxed now.
So, what did you feel in those literally 20 minutes? Were they 20 minutes of terror for you, or because you are launching the most expensive satellite?
It is not a terror. Say, I would like to say, this is the 102nd launch from Sriharikota and 18th GSLV rocket launch. And again, very important thing is the GSLV, even though it is the 18th vehicle, this is for the first time we are launching to a sun synchronous polar orbit. All other vehicles have been used for a GTO mission.
Correct. Geosynchronous mission.
So thereby, it is a new mission by itself. The performance of the rocket is so precise performance. In fact, within few kilometers dispersion, we could place the satellite. It was a highly satisfying and exciting moment for the entire ISRO community.
Dream fulfilled for you?
We have lot of dreams. This is one of the dream which is fulfilled. And to be frank, it was a major milestone for us because when our international customs are there, that we are costliest satellite ever built in the world.
For the national community, that NASA's most expensive satellite was placed on top of a cryogenic engine where you had a key role in the making. Was that something gratifying to you?
No, to be frank, this cryogenic technology was denied to India and it was the Indian team. And when the program started, I was a junior engineer. When 20 years, when we succeeded, solely I had a lot of role to play, but it is not an individual role. I will say almost 5,000 to 7,000 people, and it is a highly satisfying mission.
So what next for NISAR? How soon will we get results, and how soon is everything healthy with the satellite?
No, right now the satellite is totally healthy. In fact, that total The solar panel is deployed. It is generating the required power. Now activities are going on.
Thanks a lot for speaking to me, Dr. Narayanan. Truly a proud moment for India. And ISRO led India with pride. In New Delhi, Pallav Bagla for NDTV.
Thanks for investing your time in watching this edition of The World 24/7. As always, we'll keep tracking the latest for you. Do stay tuned.